With the development of English in different cultures and contexts, intercultural awareness is imperative for learning English as a second language. We know that conventions of speaking are different across cultures. So it seems there's a need to investigate whether the communicative or communication strategies used by different varieties of English or used by the cultures in which different varieties of English have developed, whether these conventions in these cultures are different, and how different, if different, how different they are. And this kind of awareness and understanding can ensure intelligibility of the international English or the use of English as an international language. There was a time when only English culture was considered as the appropriate culture through which English could be taught. So, all the material for English language teaching was based on the English culture or was developed in the English context. However, this view of culture or the use of only English culture for teaching English or the use of English culture as context for teaching English presents this view that we have this unified monolithic kind of a culture, although we know that we do not have any such thing as a unified culture, and there are cultural differences in all parts of the world, and which are reflected in the way people use language and also English. People use different strategies in different cultures. People use different strategies for interaction with each other depending on their age, gender, and ethnicity. So, people from different genders will use different strategies in different cultures. Similarly, people from different age brackets will use different strategies in different cultures, so on and so forth. A lot of research has been done on intercultural competence as well, and the research has shown that there are differences in the use of different strategies in following aspects. For example, people from different genders and different age groups will use or show a preference for standard language. Speakers from another age group or another gender will show a preference for, let's say, more of standard forms. So, the preference for a standard or non standard form in speech depends on the age, gender, and also ethnicity of the speakers. Similarly, performance of different speech acts, for example, the way you show agreement, the way you show disagreement, etc., also depends on all these factors: age, gender, ethnicity. And this has been understood through research. Let's take a look at an example. The research on the use of the word yes in different cultures. In Burundi, which is in Africa, an African country, the addressee may say, "Yes, I definitely agree," and then proceed to state an opinion which is completely different to the person you're talking to. So in Burundi, when you say, "Yes, I completely agree," you do not really mean that you agree. In fact, you actually completely want to contradict the other person and still you say, "Yes, I agree." In America, when women say yeah, they only mean that they are following what the speaker is saying. They do not mean whether they agree or disagree. They only mean that they are following the speaker, they're listening to the speaker. But in American English, when men say yeah, they mean that they agree with the speaker, although women do not mean that they agree with the speaker. In Japanese, when somebody says yes, it means I'm paying attention to what you're saying. So it only means that I'm paying attention and not that I agree or disagree. So we see that there are so many differences in the use of the simple word yes in different cultures. The findings of research in the area of intercultural competence make certain suggestions. For example, it suggests that language teaching needs to take into account properties of extended discourse, and that also in context. Instead of teaching language through isolated sentences or teaching language in the form of isolated sentences, disconnected sentences, it should be taught in the form of discourse, continuous text, continuous use of language, and that also in specific contexts. It also suggests that teacher education should also consider the conventions of culture that determine context-dependent language use. So this awareness of different cultures and the need to teach language in the context of different cultures should be made a part of teacher education. It also suggests that there's a need to do some awareness raising about shared and non-shared features of world Englishes. So there are certain features of world Englishes which are shared by many varieties of outer circle, but then there are other features which are specific to just one variety or two varieties. So there's a need to raise awareness about those features of world Englishes, and there's also a need to raise teacher awareness about teachers' own attitudes. How do they view different cultures, whether they have any biases, whether they consider one culture superior to other cultures. There's a need for the teachers to be aware of their own attitudes. And there's also a need to recognize the status and depth of world Englishes. So the teachers, or when we come to the task of teaching English, there should be complete understanding about the status of English, of world Englishes, different varieties of English. And there we must show some tolerance for these world Englishes. There's also a need for the projection of ethnic, gender, national and other identities through world Englishes. So while designing material for English language teaching, while designing curriculums for English language teaching, it must be made sure that this material, these materials and curriculums should project different ethnic, gender and national identities, should not focus only on English identity or English culture, but should project different identities, different ethnicities, and also take care, be sensitive to different genders. As in the past was practiced, the focus was only on the male, but there should be an awareness of different genders, and not only awareness, it should be reflected through through English language teaching, through the materials used for English language teaching, through syllabuses and curriculum selected for English language teaching. And this will ultimately enhance the intelligibility. It will make easier for speakers of different varieties of English to understand each other.